Okay, so today I'm going to talk about Ancillary Sword, which is the second book in the Imperial Radch trilogy. I just finished this book. It's the most recent book that I read. I enjoyed it. I really liked it. We're going to talk a little bit about it. I have a lot that I want to say about this book, and I don't think that I can talk about it without separating the things that I want to say from certain spoilers in the book. So if that's a thing that would bother you, then you should probably read the book first and then come back and watch this video. Before I talk about Ancillary Sword, I think I should talk about Ancillary Justice because it is the first book in the story, and it's a book that I read and really, really enjoyed. I had a friend who recommended this book to me by saying it's everything that you wanted a memory called Empire to be, but better, which was exactly the right thing to say to get me to read this book because I was so excited for Empire and really was let down by that book. So the first story follows the main character, Breck, as they become disconnected from an artificial intelligence and are stranded on a planet, and then seek to get revenge against the Emperor for the death of the captain of their ship. So this book takes place after that, almost immediately after that, like a couple weeks after the end of the first book. Where Anna under Miana I has given Breck a ship, told her to go to the space station to meet with to meet with and protect this system. In terms of story and structure, this book is more linear and more straightforward than Ancillary Justice. Ancillary Justice is told in sort of flashbacks and flash forwards, and you're sort of piecing together what happened. This book is very linear. It picks up right after the first book, as I said, and then just goes straight through to the end, which is good. I like the more straightforward approach to the story. Because of that, the mystery isn't about what's happening, but what Breck is unaware of. So I actually liked this book a little bit more than Ancillary Justice because I felt like I wasn't trying to piece together the backstory of the main character. I was trying to piece together what is being hidden from the main character, which I think just worked a little bit better for me. The second thing is that this book is definitely more of a political book than the first one. The politics of the Empire, the politics of the split Imperial AI going to war with itself in a civil war, that was slightly in the first book, but it was mostly background. It was mostly just background information and context to the revenge story, which was a lot more of the story that was being told to you. In this book, at the very beginning, and I actually think this happens at the end of the last book. It's been a while since I read the first book, but I think Breck, the main character, is given the name Miana I, and given a ship by Anna under Miana I. And then because of that, Breck goes to this system and does get embroiled in some of the politics. Immediately, Breck goes and decides to stay in the Undergarden, which is an area of the station that is not maintained, not like it's supposed to be like completely blocked off. The people there are citizens, but they don't have any infrastructure. They don't have water. They're basically left to fend for themselves. Breck decides to stay there and to use that as her home base while she's in the system. There's definitely a lot more of the imperial politics of colonialism, of what colonialism is, and how it plays out in the Imperial Radch, in Radch society. And I think that it's a very different type of story from Ancillary Justice, which is sort of the point that I'm trying to make, is that it's not the same. It's not really the same story. The other side of that coin is that because of that, we get much, much more insight into how Radch society works and how the colonized people are, assimilated into Radch society and in some cases forgotten about. So part of this book takes place on the station, and then another section of it takes place on a tea plantation on the planet, sort of downwell is what they call it. And on the plantation, there are these colonized people who are essentially slaves who through the laws and rules of Radch society would be able to become, would be able to take, it's called the aptitudes that would allow them to take whatever job they tested to be a part of. They're purposefully held in kind of subjugation and not able to do that. This is one of the things that Breck sort of tries to make right.
Future release here. There's a couple things I forgot to talk about in this section, so I'm adding them in post. The first one is that the Valskyans, who are the field workers on the plantation, they are, an underclass within Athowix society, and they are producing tea, which is one of the highest kind of cultural elements of Radch society. So they're held at a kind of lower class context than the rest of society, while kind of being the most integral part of Radch culture. And then the second thing is that in this culture, they are holding the Valskyans down, but not like they're not preventing them from taking the aptitudes. But they are creating a situation where the Valskyans are gonna always be the field workers on this tea plantation. And that made me think about, the fact that the Valskyans are kind of being punished for having a different set of values than Radch society. And their different values are being exploited in service of Radch society. So that's like a part that I was trying to get at and didn't really phrase well in the first version. So now back to the rest of the video.
There is a sense in which the fact that Breck is, not really, not even really human, right? In the first book, you find out that the ancillaries are corpses. They are dead bodies, and that in order to join the artificial intelligence, they are dead. They're corpses. So there's a sense in which Breck, having been an ancillary, having been part of this artificial intelligence, she is aware of being a sort of underclass, and then given the name Miana-I and all of the power that is bestowed to that, she's able to sort of cut through some of the things in the society around this station, in Athowix Station. There's a sense in which Breck is using the power structures that exist to undo the power structures that exist, which is like, I've got my own sort of reservations about whether that would be effective, based mostly on current events. So this was a bit of a double-edged sword. Later in the book, one of the servants, one of the tea plantation workers, she turns herself in to Breck after trying to assassinate one of the governor's sons. I think son, I don't know. So one of the things with the Imperial Radch is that the only gender is female gender. So all of the people in Radch society are women, but the colonized societies end up being, some of them are dimorphic. So some of them have, maybe dimorphic's not the right word, but some of them have a concept of binary gender, or more complex genders than just a single gender, is sort of the point that I'm making. So this character who's turned herself in after trying to assassinate one of the local leaders, she says, I can't, like, sometimes I feel powerless and I can't do anything. And then she says that, I can't do anything. Nothing I do is going to change anything. But the thing I can do is I can make you watch. I can show you what you're doing to us. And then any time that you would claim to be just or proper, you'll have to lie to yourself outright. That's like not an exact quote, but it's pretty close to the actual quote. That line was really powerful to me as someone who is kind of dealing with a lot of those feelings right now. Like, I think that that aspect of it, one was a surprise because I sort of wasn't expecting it in the book, but it did end up being a good part of the book for me. The idea of, toward the end of the book, you sort of find out exactly what's been going on with these people. There's been missing transports of people who are being sold out system to as slaves to another society, which it's largely left at a cliffhanger. So that society is probably going to go to war with the Radch in the next book. There's also the brewing, like the internal civil war between the two halves of Ana Ander Miana I. And I think that's probably, like, I was sort of waiting for that to kind of come to a head in this book, but it seems like maybe it'll come to a head in the next book. I'm excited to read the next book. I think, Ann Leckie is a great author, and I loved both Ancillary Justice and Ancillary Sword, and I can't wait to get to Mercy. One of the other things, too, is that in the first book, you have this character who is an artificial intelligence who's been cut off from the rest of the artificial intelligence, and she's like becoming an individual and has an individuality that is informed by having been part of a collective for so long. And in this book, I think more of her character is fleshed out, and the idea of that character like gaining some sort of individuality and feeling the kind of emotions that she feels, and even toward the end of the book when she eventually breaks down and just says what she is feeling and how she feels. This book really did a much better job of portraying that character, and maybe it's just because the story is more linear and you're not bouncing between this character at two different points in this journey like you are in the first book. But it made me really understand Breck as a character a lot more than I think the first book did, because the first book was sort of focused solely on her revenge story. This book, I really felt like I got more of a sense of the character. The other character that I liked was Tazarwat, Lieutenant Tazarwat. Just her sort of youthful idealism and maybe a little bit of naivete mixed with the fact that she had been essentially, killed by Ana Ander Miana I to serve as an ancillary for her, and then gets her individuality back and gets severed from Ana Ander Miana I. And just seeing her have the kind of mix of her youthful energy with the things that she obviously retains from having been part of Ana Ander Miana I's consciousness. It's very easy to see why Breck has a soft spot for her. And I think she was one of the more interesting characters to me. I would definitely recommend this book to anyone who likes space opera and likes this kind of exploration of what does it mean to be conscious and human, and what is our identity. I think some of these things are, this isn't really necessarily an explicit theme of the book, but it is there in an undercurrent. And then obviously all of the kind of social justice related themes of the book are also, really were kind of a welcome surprise. Like, I wasn't expecting that to be such a huge component of this book, but the fact that it was a pleasant surprise, and it made me want to read this book a lot more, which was good because I was kind of in a reading funk before picking this book up. So it was good, yeah. And I can't wait to read Ancillary Mercy. Have a good day.